Today I'm going to be sharing a list of fast-paced thriller book recommendations that can get you out of a reading slump. Really, this is a cry for help. I have not read a thriller book that I really enjoyed at all this year. And it's only February, it's still early, but I am in a thriller slump. Not in a reading slump, I'm in a thriller slump. I haven't found a good one yet this year. I don't know what I'm missing. And I thought maybe if I sit down and do a thriller book recommendation video, I can remember what I love about thrillers and I can get some recommendations from you. So pay attention during the video to try to figure out what I like in thriller books. I sort of know some things, the main thing being fast-paced and surprises. And if you can come up with any recommendations for me for some more recently published thrillers that maybe I would enjoy, that would be amazing because, man, I'm having a hard time this year with thrillers. Anyways, let's jump in. The first 3 books I have to talk about, I spoke about a lot last year because these were some of my favorite thriller books that I read last year, so I won't sit here and talk about them forever because if you frequently watch my channel, you've heard me talk about these books so many times. But these were some of my top 3 favorite thriller books from 2023. We have The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding, which is like a cat and mouse style thriller about a richer woman and a poorer woman whose lives intersect and then chaos ensues. Very twisty, very fun. The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is an isolated thriller following these women who are on a writing retreat, and once they arrive, they realize the stakes are much higher than they expected. It's chaotic, over the top, ridiculous, super fun. And The Last Word by Taylor Adams, which is a story about a woman who reads a book, she hates it, she gives it a 1-star review, and then the author is coming out for vengeance. Again, chaotic, ridiculous, lots of fun. I will say The Drowning Woman is more rounded, less ridiculous. It's just a pretty solid thriller. The Writing Retreat and The Last Word are pretty silly. So if you don't like a sillier thriller, then these might not be for you, but I would recommend checking out The Drowning Woman. I think this one has a lot of wide appeal. Another thriller book with really wide appeal is Falling by TJ Newman. This is a really fast-paced action survival thriller. You're following this pilot who is on this long journey on his plane, and while he's in the air, he gets a note that his family is being held hostage, and he's faced with the decision of if he's going to save his passengers or if he's going to save his family, because the people who are holding his family hostage wants him to crash his plane full of passengers. It is very intense. It made me anxious at times while I was reading it. I was like on the edge of my seat. I felt my chest getting tight. I was just like, oh, what's gonna happen? It really felt like watching an action kind of survival movie. And I do have another book from TJ Newman on my shelves. I have Drowning. So if you're thinking of recommending that, I do already have it on my shelves and I am excited to read it. And maybe that's what I need. Maybe that's the key to breaking my thriller slump. Next up is one that was kind of hit or miss for people. It is a couple years old at this point, and that is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. I personally love this one, but it seems to be something people either love or it isn't really their thing. The story is set in Ireland at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and you're following these 2 people who meet in a grocery store right before the pandemic starts. They kind of start seeing each other, then the pandemic hits and everyone's going to be quarantined, so they decide, oh, why don't we just like quarantine together? It'll just be 2 weeks. We'll really get to know each other. It'll be a good time. But by the end of it, someone ends up dead. I really liked the way the story was told, how it goes back and forth in time and from different perspectives. It kind of has that cat and mouse feel to it as well, because you're following different people with different secrets and re-understanding what's going on in scenes by revisiting it or figuring out the timeline of how things all happened. It's a little bit gimmicky in that way, and I do love a gimmicky thriller. Look Closer by David Ellis is kind of like that as well. In this story, you're following a married couple, and it seems like they have this beautiful, wonderful, perfect marriage, but they don't. The story kicks off when this beautiful rich woman ends up murdered, and that starts to unravel this web of secrets this married couple is keeping from one another, and it makes you wonder who is conning who. This book was a little bit long, so it's something you have to be a little more patient with, but it had a really, really satisfying reveal at the end that really got me, and I love a good twist in a thriller. Plus it has that cat and mouse conning type of element that I really enjoy as well, and I think it was a lot of fun. I Will Find You by Harlan Coben is another survival thriller. The survival element works really well for me. This is about this guy who got put away in prison because his son died, and it looked like he murdered his son because he was the only one in the house with his son at the time, so he ends up going to jail for it. And then all these years later, this photo surfaces of this boy who looks like it's his son, and he begins to wonder, is my son really alive? Was I framed for his murder? Who took my son if he is alive? and how do I go get him back? So he decides to break out of jail, and you follow him on this journey as he's trying to uncover the secrets about what happened to him to even put him in jail in the first place and what happened to his son. It's very intense. It's a little over the top because it's a little seemingly unrealistic to follow someone who's able to break out of prison, but I mean, that does happen all the time. And once he is on that journey, the way he goes about it is very realistic and very intense. And again, it feels kind of like watching like an action thriller movie. I've also really loved some books from Adrian McKinty, who does very similar things in his thrillers. They are survival thrillers, they are fast-paced, they are action-based, they are intense with high stakes, and they really just keep me really gripped and on the edge of my seat. I really enjoyed both of these. The first one I read was The Island. This is about this family who's on this vacation and they end up getting trapped on this island and they have to fight for their lives. Then you have The Chain, which is a story about this dark web of bad things going on where these people will kidnap children, and when your child gets kidnapped, you'll get a call and the people on the other line will tell you you have to pay money to get your child back, but you also have to kidnap someone else's child, and then you have to convince them to kidnap someone else's child. So it's this chain of kidnapping that happens, and it has to go on like 2 times before you can get your child back. And if anyone won't do it, that breaks the chain, and then the chain will come back for you and kill your family. Very intense. I love to hate on him, but I've also really enjoyed books from Riley Sager in the past. There's just something about his writing style that really pulls you into the story and you just want to see where it's going to go. And then by the end, you might get a little bit of whiplash from all of the consecutive twists he likes to pack right in the end, but something about it is just so thrilling. 2 of his more recent ones that I've enjoyed are The Only One Left and The House Across the Lake. The House Across the Lake is one where you sort of have to suspend your disbelief. It's a little bit silly, but it follows this classic kind of trope of a sort of rear window retelling where you're following this woman who is at this lake house. She sees something at her neighbor's house that she maybe shouldn't have seen, and then she might be in danger. She has to figure out if someone was murdered, and then things get really crazy. The Only One Left is a story about this woman who is a caretaker for this infamous older woman in her town who is said to have murdered her family, but she never talks about it, and she is not really able to take care of herself right now. So your main character is coming in as the caretaker for this woman who has never really spoken a word about what really happened, but then the woman decides to start telling her story to this caretaker, and the caretaker doesn't know if she is in a dangerous situation with a murderer or if there are other secrets to be uncovered. There's something so popcorny about a Riley Sager book. Even if I end up not enjoying the direction the stories go, you can't look away from it. You just keep popping the pieces of popcorn. You just want to know what's going to happen in the story, which is also how I feel about Freida McFadden. I've read 3 books from Freida McFadden now. Some of them have worked out better than others for me. The first one I started with was The Housemaid, which is probably one of her most popular ones, if not the most popular book that she's come out with. It's a story about this woman who moves into this couple's house to be a housemaid for them, and she starts to discover things going on within the house and she might be put in danger. Freida McFadden also wrote a sequel to this called The Housemaid's Secret, which follows the housemaid in a different scenario years after the first book. I did do a dedicated video talking about both of these books. I do spoil both of them. If you want the spoilers, you can also watch it without getting the spoilers. And if you're just wondering if it's worth picking up the second book after you read the first, I do answer that within that video. So I'll link that down below if you want to check that out. There's actually a 3rd book coming out in this series pretty soon, and I'm debating if I want to read it or not. The other book I've read from Freida McFadden is Never Lie. It's a story about this couple who's checking out this house that they might want to buy. Then they get stuck in the house because they're snowed in, and the woman starts exploring the house and she's finding all of these recording tapes of sessions because the woman who used to live in the house was a therapist. She starts to uncover some dark secrets. Is she in danger? It's kind of a similar theme to what the other ones have been like as well, where a regular woman just ends up in a scenario uncovering other people's secrets and potentially endangers herself in the process. All of these are just so readable. They're so readable. Like if you're in a reading slump, I just think a Freida McFadden book is so easy to get through. They're not always the most sophisticated, impressive writing style. I actually have read another book from Freida McFadden. I read The Coworker and I forgot about it because I don't own a physical copy. That one I really didn't like. I thought that one was just written pretty poorly, but all of these I at least gave a 3-star or above. They're just a fun time. She has this twisty way of writing that just really engrosses you in the characters' stories, and I don't think I've ever taken longer than like 2 or 3 days to fly through one of her books because they just go so fast. So that's all the recommendations I have for you, and now I'm asking, please help me. Let me know what thrillers I should be picking up right now that are fast-paced, action-y, twisty, if they have a cat and mouse element, something with a fun surprise, something that maybe feels like you're watching a movie, or something that can just be read in 2 or 3 sittings that I just want to fly through because I'm craving that so badly. I just feel like no 2024 thrillers have done that for me yet, and I really want to find one that does. So let me know what recommendations you have for me down below, and also let me know if I convinced you to pick up any of these books. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!